Hey there, thanks so much for checking out this video tutorial. My name is Chris and I'm here with tech coaches and my colleagues at the Brain Injury Association of Waterloo-Wellington to tell you a little bit about smartphones and tablets. We'd really like to spend some time today exploring some of the considerations that you might want to think about before you make a purchase of a new device. Without further ado, let's get into it. Starting with the basics, there are two types of mobile device to consider when buying a tablet or a smartphone. They are Apple and Android, which is a brand that's controlled by Google. It's important to recognize that there are some primary differences between these two options, so we should jump into the details of those now so that you can become familiar with them before making a purchase. Let's look at Apple first. They manufacture their own devices and they develop the software that's used by every iPhone and iPad. This ensures that when you use an iPhone or an iPad from different generations, or rather if they are newer or older, they are very similar to one another. So over time, users become familiar with them because they remain the same primarily over longer periods of time. Not only that, but when they use somebody else's device, that's an iPhone or an iPad, it's a very similar experience and they feel really familiar with that device. Let's take a look at this example. We have an iPhone on the left and we have iPad on the right. You can see that they position things on both devices in a very similar way. They also have uniform app icons across both of these devices because Apple is in control of what these icons look like. For example, you'll notice the Settings app is the same and the Camera app, although they're in different locations, they are the same icon. We also have the Photos app that is the same app across both devices. This ensures that when you use somebody else's device, you're already familiar with it, or if you get a new one, you're already quite familiar with that experience. To continue this example, if we venture into the Settings app, you'll notice that we have the same labels on both iPhone and iPad when it comes to the notifications, the sounds, focus, screen time. All of these options are available on both devices. I will note that it does say haptics when it comes to sounds and haptics options that are available on the iPhone, and that indicates that there is a function difference between the two devices. So there is some difference between the two. Haptics would be things like vibration, so that you could notice a call coming through just by the device vibrating on the table. These are important things to notice. They are similar, but there are some differences, but you can start to recognize them when you put the two devices side by side. In comparison, Google develops Android software, but they are not the only manufacturer of mobile devices that use the operating system called Android. The experience across Android mobile devices can be quite different depending on who the maker of that device is. For example, we have Samsung. Google also does make a few devices themselves called Pixel. Also, Huawei, Sony, Motorola, LG, amongst others, all manufacture different Android devices. This means that across the board, users are having different experiences depending on who made the device. So just because your sister or your neighbor has an Android device doesn't mean it's going to be anything like the one that you have. You could both be having little bits of differences between your experience. As an example of that, let's take a look at this Samsung Galaxy tablet on the left-hand side and a Google Pixel phone on the right-hand side. You can see first that on the left-hand side with the Samsung device, we have some buttons along the bottom of the screen that help us control the different operations on the tablet. Meanwhile, on the right-hand side with the Google Pixel phone, we don't have these buttons because we fundamentally control the device differently by swiping from the left or swiping from the right to control different things. So the way that they organize the controls can be completely different depending on who made the device. You'll also notice that the apps are not necessarily going to be the same. We have a Google Photos app available on the phone, and we have a gallery app available on the Samsung tablet. These apps are fundamentally different, and the gallery app on the Samsung device would be uncommon for somebody to use on the Google Pixel phone. That would be an app that's quite particular to a Samsung device. It's important to recognize as well that as we continue this example, the settings would have these differences also, because Samsung is in charge of organizing the settings on the left-hand side with the tablet, and then the Google Pixel phone is organized by Google because they're the ones that organize the device. When we get a new device, it's important to remember that we need to take time to go into the settings and configure things so that it accounts for our preferences and tendencies. This ensures that I can see things properly because I've made the font size the right size. It also means that I've adjusted the brightness. Perhaps I've adjusted some sort of a accessibility option on the device that's going to benefit me, and each user is different. So I need to make sure that I spend time on either my smartphone or my tablet, and every time I get a new one, I have to spend some time there setting it up. I also need to know that there's a unique user account associated with each smartphone and tablet. That means on an Apple device, we have something called Apple ID, and on an Android device, we use something called a Google account. And this ties some information to the unique person that's using these devices, and it allows it to be used between multiple devices. Whether you have one or not, it doesn't really matter. It is something that's very common and necessary on new devices. I also like to recommend treating devices delicately. It's better to not drop them. It's better to not leave them in the car when it's really cold or really hot, just in case that does something to the device in the long run. I wouldn't want to put it under any unnecessary stress. That means that I like to put a screen protector on my smartphone in addition to a hard case, so that if I were to drop it, as an example, it would have some protection, something acting like a shield. A general rule of thumb to think about: there are some certain times out of the year where you can get a deal buying a new device. Back to school is one of those times. Black Friday or Cyber Monday is another one. And lastly, that Boxing Day or Boxing Week sale extravaganza, that's very common. So watch out for that if you're looking to save a little bit of money getting a new device. A couple of ideas to think about when you're picking what kind of device you would like to get. Number one, stick with the brand that you know. If you already have a Samsung phone, why not get another new Samsung phone? And that would mean that you'd be familiar with it already to a degree. Even though there would be some new changes to the new model, I would still be more familiar with that device than going with an Apple. There would be a learning curve associated with switching from one to the other, and there should be a pretty good reason why you're doing that. Now, one of those reasons, my second consideration here, would be that you want to join the people in your tribe. Maybe that's your family, your friends, your neighbors, whoever they might be. But if they're all using Apple and you're the only Android person, and they're doing things on an Apple product like FaceTime, for example, that you would like to participate in, or they would like to support you with that device that you're using, except they're not familiar with Android, then maybe it's a good idea to switch over to the one that the people around you are using the most. This can be of benefit to get support and also to participate in brand-specific apps. Whether you choose Apple or Android, some key features that I would be thinking about would be screen size. The bigger the device, the easier it is to see. That's something to keep in mind. Storage capacity is also a consideration. Do you want a smaller device to save cost, but that might limit the number of photos, videos, and different apps and games that you install, versus a larger, more expensive device like a 256 gigabyte or more is going to be able to hold many more photos than a 64 gigabyte phone. So that's again another consideration to think about. Do you need the camera to be the latest, greatest technology? that's going to cost you much more money than if you just take a standard camera that will be able to document your memories just fine. However, they won't be of the quality and it won't be able to give you the feature-rich experience of these high-end phones that can cost well over $1,000. Battery life is something else that people think about when they're getting a new device. Sometimes if you're willing to spend a little bit more on a phone, you can have that phone be plugged into the wall a little bit less, but this is less important to me when it comes to my daily use of a phone because I'm very used to plugging it in at the end of the day, and that's a common practice that everybody can get used to. Lastly, I like to make sure that I'm going to have support from the company that makes the phone for a good amount of time. I wouldn't want to buy a phone that in 2 years is no longer going to be updated by Google Android. These are things to think about, my friends. I hope that's helpful. When thinking about a new smartphone, I would be considering perhaps a Samsung Galaxy device or an iPhone or maybe even a Google Pixel, knowing that there's going to be differences between them. Let's take a look at some of the cost value between the more budget-friendly and the more premium models of these different devices. The Google Pixel is an Android device, just like the Samsung Galaxy is. Now, the Google Pixel has a budget version of the phone, and it's a little bit older. It's called the Pixel 7a. So that little bit older, budget-friendly phone is going to still be about $479. The premium version of the phone is the Pixel 8 Pro, and it's going to have the latest, greatest technology with all the bells and whistles and feature upgrades, and that's going to be $1,300 or more. So you can see there's quite a big difference between the cost of the budget and the premium models. If we switch to the Samsung Galaxy devices, the budget device would be called a Galaxy A53. That's a $329 device. And you could then bump that up to the premium device called the Galaxy S23, and that's going to be at least $1,000. So you can see once again, you can get that Samsung Galaxy experience, but there is a budget version of it and a premium version of it. And do you need all of the latest, greatest technology, or would you be okay having that more budget-friendly experience? I think a lot of us would be okay with these budget experiences, but I digress. Let's now look at iPhone. This is the Apple device, the budget version. It's a little bit less robust. It has a slower processor, a less powerful camera. It's made of different materials like plastics instead of glasses and metals, and that's going to run $579 for the budget brand called iPhone SE. Now, if we switch to the premium phone, you can go to iPhone 15 Pro, and that's going to be a $1,400 phone because it has the latest, greatest additions. When it comes to tablets, I would still be thinking about trying to get the best experience that I can. So I'm thinking of the Samsung Galaxy version of the Android devices. I also like iPad when it comes to Apple, and then Amazon Fire is something that's available in the Android department, but it is important to note that it's not quite the same as all other Android devices. It is limited because Amazon made it. They put all sorts of Amazon-specific apps on there, and they did make it so that certain apps are not available, such as the popular YouTube app or the Gmail app. You can still watch YouTube videos on it, but you would have to use the website using the browser provided instead of being able to download the specific YouTube app that most other Android users would be familiar with. The feature is not there, but the function of watching YouTube is still available on both of those different Android devices. But diving into some details about the cost, let's look at the Samsung Galaxy. Once again, we've got budget and premium available. So let's think of the budget brand Galaxy Tab A7 as the low-end version of the tablet, and that's $200. And I would be thinking a $200 tablet will probably last me about 2 years, maybe 3 years. and then it starts to go too slow, things start to not work right, or maybe some updates no longer are provided to that device because it's getting a little bit obsolete. Move over to the premium Samsung Galaxy tablet. It's called the Galaxy Tab S9, and that can be $1,000 device, which means I would expect to have it for probably 5 or more years because I've put some good money into it. It's going to have the much bigger screen, it's going to have the better quality picture, it's going to have a higher end camera included on it as well. If we switch over to the Amazon Fire, you can get an average Amazon Fire for $189, and I must say that it is a good quality device for that $200 price point. I would say that this one here is a good bang for your buck, but remember, it's not a full Android device, so some of the features that you would experience on others will not be available to you. Lastly, we have Apple. Their budget is going to be the older one. It's called the iPad 10th generation, and these older devices are worth about $599. And then the premium is called the iPad Pro, and it's going to be a larger screen, and it's going to have better cameras, and once again, it's going to have all those bells and whistles that are going to bring it up to the price point of over $1,000. So these are some ideas to think about, friends, when you're selecting a new tablet. Let's spend a few minutes looking at smartphone plans. We are in Ontario, Canada, so we're only going to look at a few options that are available here, but know that there is time that you should spend looking around because different providers do offer different prices. First thing that I wanted to note is that I'm looking at the bring your own phone sections of these websites. If I look at plans that involve getting a phone with the plan, then the price gets inflated each month because I'm paying for a portion of the phone every month that I receive a bill. So I didn't want to look at those options because that can make it seem like it's more expensive than it is. For example, I pay over $100 a month because I'm paying for a little bit of my phone with every bill. But if I go to a provider and I bring my own phone, then they can simply provide me the service to that phone, and the device was on me to bring into the contract. So the first option that I'll look at is Bell. It's one of the biggest providers in the province. It's available in the most number of locations, and you can see that I'm on that bring your own phone part of their website. And when I review that website a little bit further, I can find some examples of the plans that they have. The first one is for $35, and it involves no data. It's just calling and texting. And if I take my own device, then I get that option. But often you don't get that option if you're getting a device with the contract each month. They make you get the data if you're getting the phone through the provider. That's quite often what happens. Maybe there's exceptions to that rule, but that is quite often what happens. But if you bring your own phone into the contract, then they can give it to you without the data. If you do want the data, then you can see the cheapest plan that Bell has available is at $65, and it's got the standard protocol speed for that data, and then they'll go up to $90 and even more, but I don't want to explore that for faster speeds and more data each month. Moving on from Bell, I'm going to look at the Fido website. Now, once again, they've got the I already have a phone option or the I need a new phone option, and they will gladly sell you the phone along with your services each month, but I'm going to go with the bring your phone to the contract option. You can see here it starts with a $37 option. You get a little bit of data each month, and it's also got the calling and the texting included. And then they've got a deal where you can get way more data with the talk and the text for a cheaper price than the other one. So I think that that's just an important thing to note. It is cheaper at other providers for lots of data. So you do need to think about what amount of data you would want to use per month. 2 gigabytes is just a little when it comes compared to 50 gigabytes for a cheaper price. So it sounds like I would be getting a pretty good deal here at Fido, and it looks like it's in that same ballpark range for one of the more expensive plans over at Bell. The last option I'm going to look at is Kudo, And once again, I'm going to go to the bring your own phone option, but they will definitely add that monthly chunk to your bill that will chisel away at the cost of the phone that you pick. And you can see here with, once again, more of a budget brand instead of Bell or TELUS or Rogers, which are these larger brands. When you go with Fido and Kudo and Virgin, you can often save a lot of money every month because their plans are a little bit cheaper, but maybe their coverage isn't as good. That's the one thing to think about. If you're going up to cottage country, then maybe you're not going to get great coverage working with Kudo because they have fewer cell towers available to them, unlike Bell or Rogers or TELUS. But you can see here on the Kudo website, they once again have this $34 50 gigabyte plan. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me, once again, compared to those bigger prices from Bell. Hopefully that was some insightful information for you to consider, my friends. That's it for this video tutorial. All the best on your digital literacy journey. Do stay tuned for some additional resources in the future from your colleagues here at the Brain Injury Association of Waterloo-Wellington. I'm Chris from Tech Coaches. Thanks so very much. Have a great day.